Welcome everyone who has joined us this morning for a 30-minute webinar titled Construction Software Strategy 101. The purpose of this session is meant to be more or less an informal discussion for those who are interested in evaluating software to help improve your operations, how you can bring something forward to leadership for evaluation, and ultimately how to make sure a solution is going to be successful for you and your business. A couple housekeeping notes before we get started. All the participant lines have been muted. However, we do absolutely encourage you to enter questions during the session at any time. Use the question box in the panel on the GoToMeeting as we go through the session, and I will address as many as possible at the end of the presentation. This is being recorded, and a copy of this will be provided to our team by our team later this week. So again, let's get started here. Just a quick background on myself. My name is Brandon Farino. I'm the Regional Sales Director for the New England Territory for B2W. I'm responsible for both our existing clients who use our technology, as well as working with new contractors who are looking to bring in types of technology to improve their various areas of their operation. I've spent the majority of my career working with customers to better understand their challenges and ideally trying to provide solutions that most closely fit their objectives. For those who are not familiar with B2W, we are actually a Trimble company now. Last September, we went through an acquisition where Trimble brought us into their family of companies to help expand their heavy civil footprint. Our focus is more in the heavy civil, ground down, utility, road, bridge contractors. And again, our idea is to help you expand your business, bid more jobs, as well as kind of make sure those jobs are running profitably. The agenda for the session is kind of laid out below here. Again, we should be able to wrap up the session by about 9:30 Eastern and ask your questions as we go through this. Let's get started. So for companies who are looking to add technology to the mix, really what you have to do from a personnel standpoint is really understand who the current players are within each of your organizations, right? Each company is going to be coming at this from a little bit of a different angle, and each person will have their own kind of personas. So there's really kind of two sides to any equation, right? The office side of things, where you have your executive teams, your IT folks, your accounting people, as well as more operations side of things. President, CEO, owner, really kind of the visionary behind the company. Where are we heading as an organization? What's the next biggest obstacle we need to overcome? Your chief financial officer, controller, all about the money. I'm sure some of you have seen the movie Jerry Maguire from the mid-90s with Tom Cruise's famous line, "Show me the money." Right? These folks are responsible for the overall cash flow, pay invoices, employees. We'll come back to that role here later this morning. Your director of IT needs to understand what the current systems are that are already in place. Where are they actually installed? Are they on-premise in your own data centers, sitting in servers in either some of your basements or attics of your various offices, or are they in this proverbial thing called the cloud? Again, their role is to manage and go-forward strategy for all potential software within the company that owns and utilizes. Director of Operations, do we have enough equipment for this upcoming season? Do we need to hire more manpower for a particular upcoming project, right? Really looking at the overall operations of the business. The accounting manager. These folks are really the financial heartbeat of any contractor out there. They have a pulse on payroll for employees, billings to material suppliers, invoicing, as well as kind of payment collection, from your actual customers. Chief estimator, the lifeblood of the business. Again, the role is to continue to increase the backlog of new projects. They're tasked with winning jobs for the company to actually work on. Scheduler and dispatcher, operationally responsible for getting employees to the right job sites at the right time. Same with equipment. Some equipment, as you know, can move itself. Some needs assistance. Sometimes they actually do turn into detectives trying to identify where a piece of equipment is actually at as well. I'm sure no one on this call has ever misplaced or lost a $100,000 plus piece of equipment for any length of time. Now, let's move to the field side of things. Project managers, again, responsible for profitability of multiple projects at once. Are we actually going to make money on this or not? Foreman, trying to get crew members to the actual site, competing to complete the tasks to continue to forward progress. Safety manager, very, very important task. Ideally, making sure every single person who comes to work that day can go home to their families. Fleet manager, right? Keep that piece of equipment running. Duct tape, bubble gum, shoestrings, combination of everything, all the above. Really doing whatever it takes to keep the iron in trucks and machines going on your sites. If anyone has asphalt operations, your plant managers, right? Making the raw materials to provide out to the market. No construction happens without this first step. So in summary, many different personas. Some companies and contractors could have multiple divisions within the organization, right? A north division, a south division, varying scopes of work, earthwork, electrical, demolition, etc. Some smaller companies may actually have one person that handles 3 or 4 of these hats on any one given day. Ideally, everyone needs to work together to make this work in unison. So for you, those folks that are on the call in the session this morning, if you're looking to bring a potential new software system forward, understanding how each person is going to look at something new and help you approach the different areas of the business is really, really key. So what are some questions that you have to think about as you kind of go through looking at your own processes? The first question that comes to mind is, who is that one person that's going to push back on the new change? I'm sure we all can very easily identify that one person who's going to dig in their heels and resist any type of change. We are all human. We all want to take the path of least resistance. Personally, I know when a new process is brought forward to me, my initial reaction is, why do I really have to do this, right? But once I learn the reasoning and actually why, my concerns are put at ease. What we have seen work really well recently is to actually try and get that person involved at the start of an evaluation. Let's call that person Mikey for this morning, right? Mikey, we know historically you haven't really been open to technology or change, but we really want to try and take a different approach this time around. Mikey, we want your input up front before we even consider making a purchase or a selection to make sure you're okay with it. Again, the idea is if Mikey can do it, anyone can do it. If you can make a poster child of someone within your company who's technology adverse or scared of change, right? That'll help everyone in the organization going forward. Is this going to affect the other areas of my business? Again, a relatively small change on one side of things can really have a significant effect down the line tremendously, both in a good way and a bad way. I was actually working with a recent contractor, and their idea was to implement an electronic timesheet solution. Now, the field team was all on board, project managers, foremen. They went out and found a cheap, low-cost solution. They thought it would work for the business. They made the selection. They made the purchase. They set everything up. Field loved it. It was great, much, much quicker than the actual writing down things and sending them back to the office. But what they failed to realize was how everything in the office was affected, right? While it helped the field teams out tremendously, that contractor ended up spending twice as much time in the office to fix, manipulate, edit, adjust things as they came in as they would have originally done if they just had continued their original process. Again, just knowing how something can affect downstream is something you have to be considerate and mindful of. Are we going to communicate this internally, or how are we going to communicate this internally to our own team members, right? There's no one approach that is a silver bullet. What you need to understand and what you need to think about is, how are my teams going to actually receive the message? Usually it's a combination of emails, flyers, handouts, reminders at weekly, quarterly meetings, company gatherings, etc. Regular and consistent messaging works the best. I can tell you what does not work anymore are decisions being made in a vacuum. Gone are the days where executives, owners make a decision and force it down upon the individuals within the company. Now, there are situations where this does happen, but from experience, it just unfortunately is not the normal anymore. Is there also a need to notify anyone externally, right? Think about this as you go through this. Prime example would be bonding companies or long-standing customers, subcontractors that you have a tight relationship with. Let them know that you're trying to make a change. They might even have recommendations of their own that they can make for you based on kind of what they know about your business. How do we make a change? Once we make a change, how are we going to ensure that this is successful? Ongoing training is absolutely critical and huge. The initial training is one thing, but really, you don't know what you don't know until you actually get into it and start using it, right? What we have been doing more recently is actually coming back to our clients after a few months of the initial training and helping them with follow-up training. Also, take the time to reevaluate the system once you put it in place on a yearly basis. What tweaks can be made? Do we really need this? Does it have to do that? Can it do this? Again, all these things you have to think about, continually looking and evaluating software after you actually bring it in. Having a corporate mandate from the top down makes a huge difference and makes sure all the employees are actually on board. Is there a right time, quote unquote, to make the switch? Construction, as you know, is very seasonal, right? But there really isn't a good time or a bad time anymore. Historically, it was, well, we'll get to this in the wintertime when we slow down, us obviously up here in the New England area. But until about a week ago, right, there was really no sign of winter up this way. Now, that's changed in the last 72 hours, but the most successful companies know that they have to continually get better each day in order to stay ahead of their competition. Why are we making this change? What are our key objectives? Are they written down anywhere? Can we refer back to them? This has to remain top of mind all the way through the process. Again, each person within the organization is going to have their own why. What you as an individual need to do is document them, write them down so you can refer back to it. Can our current vendors help us with what we are looking to accomplish? One of the last things we as a software company would ever advocate for is to have a series of disjointed systems that work in individual silos that don't communicate with each other, right? We're not looking to kind of have you just add on stuff, right? This is huge. I can't tell you the number of times a current customer says to me, can you do X, Y, and Z? Well, maybe not in the product you currently own, but if you don't ask the question to your current providers, you may never know the answer. All right, so this leads us to our next topic on the agenda. What should you be asking your potential software at vendors as you go through your evaluations and your conversations with them? Everyone knows the typical ones to ask, right? How long have you been around? How many employees do you have? Where are your offices? And candidly, do your products actually work, right? What you need to focus on really isn't the product itself, right? Sure, does it need to work? Does it need to, meet your objectives and solve your issues? Absolutely yes. However, it's really everything else outside the actual product that makes a huge difference with who you're going to actually partner with. What does the implementation process look like? How long will it actually take? This is the number one thing that contractors seriously underestimate, is the amount of time that it's going to take to implement something new. You have your day jobs to do. You have a business to keep running. Jobs are going to go sideways. You'll have vacations. There's going to be weeks where you just can't dedicate any time to this at all, and it's all about just keeping your head above water, right? If any provider that you speak with tells you that an implementation is going to be easy, quick, painless, you should seriously consider question this to them and dig into more detail here. What does the ongoing account management look like once we're a customer? Again, this usually isn't something you would think about before you make a selection and a purchase, but you should understand what the support system, if any, would look like once you actually do come on board. And when I say support, I'm not meaning I forgot my password, can you help? But really, who internally at the vendor or the partner is going to be the internal advocate for you on your behalf to help you get to the right people when you truly need something from the actual partner. Explain your customer service support team. How are they set up? How do I get assistance after normal hours? Every single provider out there is going to tell you that they have the best service department, and they have all kinds of awards and accolades. What you need to do is understand who is actually going to be on the other end of that support phone or email, how that process actually works. Is it their own people? Do they subcontract everything out to a third-party company where you're just going to be a name and a number? Do they speak English? Am I going to wait 5 minutes, 5 seconds, 50 minutes when I call? Hopefully it's not the latter part of that. And I'm sure we've all had a somewhat poor experience in the past with 2+ hours on hold. Really just doesn't work in our mindset now. My suggestion is pick up the phone. Call the customer support number, even if you're not a customer yet. See what happens. I'm XYZ contractor, thinking about potentially buying your software. Just wanted to see what happens. You would be surprised what you hear and what you can learn from the folks on the other end of the phone. How often are you releasing features, functionality? The best software companies in the world are constantly adding new things to the product. Candidly, some things that are being added into the product may not be relevant to you or the way you use the system, but having an idea on understanding how much time and effort goes into taking customer feedback, developing new items, is a sign of a great partner. In the software world, usually there's things that we call major and minor or point releases. Just as the name intends, major are big things, right? Minor are tweaks and modifications to things that are already in the product. Major releases are typically happen 2 to 3 times a year. Minor ones maybe 4 to 5 times a year. If a company is not adding new features, new technology, new additions to their current product, it might be a sign that product is actually nearing the end of its life. What's the one thing that you wish the product did today but didn't have in it? This answer is very telling. Could be very simple, right? Many people ask if we can make the screen white or another very simple change. But any answer you hear here, the vendor are hearing this from multiple contractors, and they're relatively common. Who else uses this technology that's similar to me? Usually you don't want to be the first one out there using technology, but maybe your company wants to be on the very, very cutting edge, and you have the ability to be the potential guinea pig. Most contractors really don't have that luxury. If the provider gives references for you to speak with, take the time to actually connect with them and get their real world feedback. Understand how long they've been using the product. Did they start last year? Were they the first customer ever? Try and learn a lesson from that particular contractor. The best question that I would recommend you ask a potential reference is, what is one thing or what is a lesson learned and something you would caution us on if we go down this road? Learn from others' mistakes, right? It's one thing coming from the actual software provider, but it's a completely different story when you talk to a community of your peers. Now, let's switch gears a little bit. We've talked to providers, you've done demonstrations, you received pricing from your providers, you've done evaluations, and really kind of you're preparing to make the business case internally. What do I do, Brandon? Well, you kind of have to prepare a return on investment, right, for leadership. It may be to your controller. It may be to your director of IT. It may be to your director of operations. Each company is, again, a little bit differently. But there are 2 things that any leader wants to actually know, right? How much is it going to cost? And when are we going to actually see the return on investment? So this is what you have to start thinking about, and this is what you have to start looking at. The hard cost of the actual software. Each provider is going to license their product slightly differently. Some companies still use a perpetual server-based license where you actually own the license itself. What's more common now is the actual subscription model where you pay on a monthly or annually basis. You need to understand if it's a concurrent user, meaning seats at a table type model, or an individual named user licensing model. Each method has their own pros and cons, and if you don't understand, again, just ask, and the provider should be able to provide you very clear direction. Do not be confused on any type of the licensing agreements. Implementation, this is setting up of the actual system. making it customized to you and your organization, configuring it, making it your own. Training, either on site at your offices, or you may need to travel somewhere to actually have a class on the actual product. But I would recommend asking if the training is going to be one-on-one with the provider and yourself. Sometimes you might actually be in training sessions with other contractors. It's not giving you that one-on-one time. Remember, do not forget to include the follow-up training that we had talked about a little earlier this morning. Any potential custom work. Is there anything unique or specific to your business that you're asking a vendor to provide to you? A special report, a special workflow outside the normal product. Usually this is a one-time thing, and any modifications that are made are yours and yours alone, but you have to ask the question. The one point of caution here I would recommend thinking about on the custom side of things is the more you customize things, the harder it may be to keep in place as the years go on and upgrades are being made to the actual software. Not saying that's impossible, but just a point of caution to point out. IT, technology, hardware. You want to let's just say you want to introduce a field system to the business with tablets, but the field team's idea of a tablet is a red leather field book or a binder, right? Paper. They love paper. Actual hardware of the devices themselves. You will have to go out and buy hardware. Usually you don't need the most expensive tablet in the world or smartphone in the world because they are going to get used and abused and run over and broken by machines. Depending on the provider you're talking to and the licensing model, you actually may need to do some upgrade or beef up some of your internal systems that you currently own in order to kind of make this run smoothly as well. Lean on your IT team with this. Do not think you can go into this alone. Don't assume that there's no potential cost either. Sometimes this is much more than you would actually initially think. Buying the system is one thing, but having the right infrastructure behind it is just as important. Take, for example, if you wanted to set up a media room or a home theater, something in your home. If you purchased a VCR to run your movies, will it work? Sure. Is it going to give you the 8K OLED picture where you can see every single freckle on Tom Cruise's face? Probably not. Again, I think you get the point. This is the other half of the equation, right? This is the part that really gets subjective, and you will need to likely lean on your vendors to help put something together with this. Some providers have a very fancy return on investment calculator and can make everything look really good on paper, but it's really nowhere close to realistic out there, right? Time savings. Everyone's heard the saying, time is money. Well, it's true. Whatever process you're looking to fix, what you need to understand is how long does that currently take you? Without a benchmark, you really have no idea, what you're striving for or what you're kind of looking to improve upon. Productivity increase, right? If you can save time in one area, well, you can do more overall in a different area with the same amount of time. Let's talk through just a brief and very basic, simple example. Let's say it takes you 1 hour to do a task. And with the introduction of this new process, well, now you can do the same task in 30 minutes. Well, simple math is that's 50% time savings. However, what is much more meaningful to your leadership team, your executive team, is to put some real dollars towards this. So 1 hour of pay is $30, just using rough math. 50% time savings, that means that cost that was 30 is now 15. One person saving $15 a day times 250 working days in a year, that's $3,750. Not really that much, right? But take that and apply that to 10 people. If you're following the math, now that's $37,500. Apply that to 20 people. Now you're talking $75,000. Having real dollars prepared is going to make a huge difference when you make your case to your leadership team. Opportunity cost. This is really, really hard to quantify, right? But I wanted to put it up here. But the question you need to ask yourself is, what happens if we as a business continue to do what we're doing now? Isn't that the most expensive phrase in business? We've always done it this way. estimating is a very simple example to bring this forward. If you're still manually putting out Excel bids, via Excel or pen and paper, well, you can only do X amount of bids per week. There's projects that come up all the time, but again, we're only human, and there's only so many hours in the day. So maybe you miss out on a potential new $1 million project because you just don't have the time and bandwidth to put everything together. Again, this is very, very hard to actually quantify, but what are we missing if we don't do something? What are we missing if we don't change as an organization? So how do you put it all together, right? Ideally, again, your leadership team is going to want to know who have you actually talked to, right? You're going to know the personality of your key decision makers. So there's no one right or wrong way to do this. Some leaders will want a full-blown PowerPoint presentation with charts and graphs and color-coded and everything like that. Some are going to want it on the back of a cocktail napkin. But most people will want it somewhere in between. So I would suggest a one-page kind of Reader's Digest version of who you've talked to, why you've talked to them, and kind of have that all prepared. You don't need to speak to 100 different companies, right? We're not naive. There are a lot of different providers out there. Again, each company is going to be coming at this from a slightly different angle, and you as an organization need to figure out what is going to be the best fit for me as a contractor in my business going forward. Numbers and hard facts are the best. Rarely have I seen that decisions are being made on complete feel or gut instinct. Does it happen? Yes. But having facts and hard numbers behind the justification are seriously going to improve your chances of bringing this forward to the business. What's the long-term total cost of ownership? Well, depending on your organization, your team may want to look at a 3-year, 5-year, a 10-year total cost of ownership, meaning what does my long-term investment actually look like? You have to factor in ongoing training, annual maintenance, support contracts, future growth of the company. What happens if we add a new employee or a new division? How are we going to get them up and going? How are they going to get trained on the system when we've already been running this for 6 months, 6 years, etc.? Again, just things to think about. Each company is going to be a little bit different as you go through this. What if scenarios? These are going to be things that come up completely in the heat of the moment when you're speaking with your leadership team. You'll rarely have a chance to know the answers to these questions as they come up. Your president, owner, CEO, CFO may say, what happens if our company gets acquired, purchased, sold? What happens if power goes out in a region? Well, I don't know the answer to that. Just write it down, work with your provider, work with the software company, and we can get back to you on an answer that actually kind of makes sense. So, again, in summary, just wanted to kind of take the time here to take you through understanding who the individual companies are within your organization, right? I wanted to give you some summaries and takeaways for the actual sessions. Number one, include the person within your organization who will say no up front. Find that Mikey or Mikeys, plural, right? There may not just be one person. Get them involved up front in the decision-making process. Ask your current technology providers if they can help before approaching outside vendors. You will be surprised to understand and know what the capabilities of your current providers are if you don't ask the question. Lastly, as you approach your leadership team, have a simple, clear business justification for leadership to look through. So with that said, wanted to kind of wrap up here this morning and wanted to thank everyone on the actual session for their time here this morning. And at this time, I'll pause for any questions. So if you have any questions, please enter them into the chat, and I will wait for some of these to come through. All right, here's one question from the audience. How many software vendors should we typically look at? Well, it really depends on what you're trying to accomplish. My suggestion and our guidance would be to talk with at least 2 or 3. But again, each company is going to be a little bit different, and we would not recommend you just look at one sole provider absolutely do your due diligence. Make sure you understand what the market looks like and know what's out there and what your options actually are. Here's a second question. How long should a typical evaluation take? Again, good question. As I mentioned, the typical construction is a very seasonal business, right? During season, you may not have as much time to actually go through it, but if you do this right, a full evaluation of 2 or 3 software companies should be able to take place in roughly 30 to 45 days. Again, we know you have your business to run. You know you have operations that you can't just dismiss for a couple weeks to solely focus on this. So it would take about a month, month and a half to kind of go through that. What if we have more than one person on our team who is afraid of technology? Well, you're in good hands. Okay. Many contractors are kind of in the same boat, right? We know you don't want to have a mutiny on your hands, but depending on what role they are in, what you need to do is understand why they're potentially nervous. So again, you can come to the table and find out how you can overcome their individual kind of resistance to this. Work with your provider. They've gone through this before, and they'll be able to help you out going forward. All right, I don't see any more questions in the chat, so I wanted to thank everybody here for the time. In closing, I wanted to kind of just let everyone know on the call that BTW will be attending some upcoming industry events. We are relatively busy here in the February and March timeframe. We will be at the National Asphalt Pavement Association down in Miami, the NDA conference out in Phoenix, and then most of our team will be moving out to Las Vegas for a week or so in mid to late March. So we look forward to seeing you in person. If you are attending any of these events, please stop by and say hi. And otherwise, we hope you have a great rest of the day, and let us know if you have any questions. Thank you again. Take care.